from a business standpoint, trying to have a mentor in the field, podcast reading, conferences. I try to do new ones every year and then go out of my comfort zone, meet new connections, joining local organizations. So I do all of that to keep improving my skills.
Yeah, I would just say someone told me one time, and I don't even know if it's a real word, but they said you need to be unoffendable, meaning that you have to be open for critical feedback from all levels. And that's something that I take with me wholeheartedly. Like, I encourage my team to give me feedback if they think that there's something I could be doing a little bit differently to support them. So I think just being open to that, being unoffendable, learning that there are new ways to do stuff, and just because it's always been done the same way forever doesn't mean that there's not a better way to do it. Is something that's really helped me kind of improve my leadership.
Welcome to the AOAP's Discussion from the Deep End, a podcast for aquatic professionals by aquatic professionals. We're here to share real stories and practical ideas to help you run safer and stronger aquatic programs and facilities. I'm Daniel Peters, your host, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Kirsten Barnes. AOAP is a nonprofit dedicated to improving aquatic education, recreation, and safety through training, resources, and community. Today, we're joined by two leaders from AMS Pools, and we're going to talk about what it takes to lead a large aquatics operation, how community culture shapes everything from staffing to service, and why even something like children's books can be a powerful tool for leadership and communication.
Today, we're excited to welcome Chris Dreybus and Trey Standridge from AMS Pools, a full-service company specializing in lifeguard services, pool cleaning, renovations, repairs, and new pool construction. AMS manages a wide range of aquatic facilities and helps support everything from daily operations to long-term planning. Chris is the co-president and co-owner of AMS Pools. He has a bachelor's degree in polymer engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and a master's in business administration from Georgia State University. But somehow he's been in aquatics for over 20 years. He is an instructor trainer for Ellis and Associates and provides over 950 lifeguards to properties across Metro Atlanta. When not working, he enjoys spending time with his family, playing tennis, or reading a good book. Meanwhile, Trey brings 10 years of experience to his role as Director of Operations. He has audited internationally for Ellis and Associates, managed dual water parks out of Texas, and is currently the Director of Operations at AMS Pools. When not working, Trey enjoys taking his dog to the dog park, golfing, and trying a new good restaurant. Through their work at AMS Pools, Chris brings leadership experience across the company's strategic and operational side, while Trey oversees the management of more than 100 aquatic facilities and hundreds of team members. Together, they bring a perspective shaped by training, mentoring, risk management, team building, and a strong commitment to safety and service. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Kirsten. Thanks, Daniel. Really excited to be here today.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about you all. Chris, how did a degree in polymer engineering and a master's in business admin lead you to 20 years by the pool?
Yeah, so this started probably like most people, just as a summer job. The founder of AMS was my neighbor up the street. Mom said, "Hey, you need to get a job. Go talk to Mr. Paul." I did at 15, did well as a lifeguard, quickly became a head guard, and then in college became an area manager here. And then from Georgia Tech, I went straight into my MBA. And when I started doing my MBA, they promoted me to director. Did that through the MBA a couple years afterwards. And then I pursued my engineering passion. Did that for around 5 years. And during that, I count my 20 years for full credit. I did some instructing for a few years. I count every year that I was coming back and helping as instructing to get to my 20 right now. But stayed in touch with them. And then they recontacted me 6 years ago now, which time flies, but about coming back as a business partner and opened up the books, kind of had some good discussions, and was a business owner at 31, which was really unique, and helped come back and grow the company, and kind of is what it is now where we are today. And what I was missing, I guess, from the engineering aspect, I love the leadership and developing teams, and do have a passion of safety. I've grown up in Metro Atlanta most of my life, so providing the safest pools for neighborhoods. And I know we sit in kind of like a unique kind of element where almost every neighborhood, they're all one entrance or a couple entrances and they all have swim tennis. And so there's just so many pools down here. So unique in the segment of the US and world, kind of with how we're living community to community, but have a true passion to keep the pools safe. So that's kind of where I've gone along in my journey and how I'm back into aquatics today.
So, like many of us, you went to the pool one day because your mom said, I'm not going to pay for your gas. And here you are 20 years later.
Exactly. It's you need to start, you're 15, you need to start making money. I was doing babysitting, but I think like it was $3 or $5 back when I started babysitting, just to the neighbors and like next door, we need to help your neighbors, go watch them. And then I was like, you need to get a real job, let's get some money. And I was making big dollars, $7 an hour back then. And I thought I was falling out of control or something.
That's awesome. Well, Trey, your path seems a little bit more direct. Tell us how you ended up in aquatics.
Yeah, so I actually did have a job. I worked for my family at a restaurant, and all my friends worked at the lake. And I decided that it looked like they were having a lot of fun outside, and I was tired of washing dishes at 16. So back when the radio was a thing, I heard an ad on the radio for summer lifeguard jobs, and ended up applying for that. I worked at a water park in Arkansas for 3 years as I finished high school, and then went on to college. They ended up not opening after COVID, so I had the opportunity to work for Ellis as an auditor and got to travel around the country doing different risk management audits on every type of facility you can think of, from pools like we do here to corporate water parks, and even got to do some lakefront and oceanfront audits, which were super interesting. But it opened my eye to the possibility of, hey, this could actually be more than just a summer job. So finishing up college, my boss actually from Arkansas gave me a call one day and said, "Hey, if you are open to it, I have a operations manager position, and we'll be willing to work with your school schedule for you to come work during the summer." Full time, go back, finish your degree, and then come move here full time. So I ended up doing that, moving to Dallas, and I helped run a couple water parks out there for a few years. And then in November of 2024, took the job here with AMS, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. It's kind of cool to see how that full circle works and how a job when you're 15 or 16 can turn into a career. I've luckily been able to do that for myself as well. So pretty cool feeling. We'll jump into some leadership topics. You guys are an AOAP power speaker due to the session this year about leadership through children's books. It clearly resonated with attendees. What sparked that idea? Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I think my mom was a reading recovery teacher. So growing up, we always had the thing, there's no such thing as too many books. And that's carried to my kids now. We have a library of tons of books. But I think the reading element's been there instilled for my mom. And then honestly, I was at Lunch and Learn. So the 5 years outside of aquatics, I was in a telecommunications company, tech. Try to take different opportunities for growth, and they did like lunch and learns. And so there was a senior VP, and one of the questions asked was, "What was your favorite book for growth, or what's a great leadership book?" And he actually said "The Day the Crayons Quit," and had it on the back of his shelf. I actually have one here as well, but he said that, and so I read that book for the first time, and then shortly after that, I think maybe within the year, I came back here, and it's talking about different personalities and how do you manage them. There's kind of like a Harvard business if you go Google it. So I came up with a lesson plan for the one book. And then during this time coming back, I became a dad. So I started reading a lot of kids' books, and I just thought, oh, this has a great theme. What is that theme? A little bit of research, kind of get some lesson plans, which again, I think get from my mom of, all right, what is the theme? What is the takeaway? And then how do you repeat it over and over? And so preparing for the conference, right, and building these out over the past 5, 6 years of these books, they're really quick, they're easy lessons that are instilling some kind of takeaway from people management or like celebrating successes. How do we think? How do we practice some EQ and the different ways we read the book or do the activity as well? So it's kind of evolved. It started, I think, maybe with my mom to kind of summarize it with the instilling of the books, but then also just this senior leader in a tech company saying this is one of the best leadership books and it's so quick and a takeaway. And then making it our own here and how do we apply it in the aquatics field?
Those darn teacher parents just trick us into learning all the time, don't they? Love it.
Yes.
Well, Trey, what do you think is powerful about using stories or simple ideas to help teams understand these kind of bigger workplace values?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. One of the things I think, especially with children's books, is it's a different approach to get your message across. I know whenever I was a lifeguard and going through team meetings and in services and stuff like that, we may have managers that say, okay, you need to do this, this, this. Don't forget to do this, this, this. And it doesn't really resonate with you because you feel like you are, being talked to. Whereas we like to use this approach and make it as interactive as possible. One of the things that we did during our sessions when we go over the stories from the children's books is we ask the audience to go around and we want you to read the children's book because it allows you to really understand the content that's going on. And then there are different approaches that we have as well. When we do that, we want to make sure that everyone has a different perspective on the concepts of the story. And we think we get that by interacting with each other, popcorning to your friend, having them read the next story. So it's just a neat, different approach. And for us too, like our manager meetings are at 7 a.m. on Fridays, right? So we are nice a lot of the times and we'll bring donuts and coffee for them. But it's like, okay, what can we do to keep them engaged and actually get this information across without them falling asleep? Well, children's books are great for that.
Yeah, and just to add on just a little bit, like we did this, talked about it a little bit, like the research. Children's books are designed to be sticky, right? They're for like developing minds, so they're easier to recall. Or I think it's like a cognitive hack, kind of like, hey, they're simple, repetitive, really bright. So they're designed for developing readers to learn them and be able to remember them easily. So it's just another way to like really drive home, hey, here's the concept, and then when you do it in a fun manner, it makes the recall even more. So I think those are some of the key things with using the books for some teaching lessons.
In order to kind of connect that theme to the realities of running a lifeguard management company, what were your, I guess, motives or ideas behind that?
Well, I think depending on each book, so one of them is The Things You Can Think. So we're talking about thinking, we make them read it out loud, and it kind of does their EQ or their stage presence because these managers have to run in services and trainings. So they're popcorning and they have to get out of their comfort zone. Our job as a serious runner, we have to be ready to save a life and really instill this into kids. But I really think when you go to like young leaders, they are developing and learning like the balance of being strict, but not too strict. And you'll see sometimes they overcorrect. And I think this is just a really good way to remind them it's okay to be like, sometimes I say like silly, goofy, or I like lighthearted as well. Like the lightheartedness, the fun, you need that, especially with teenagers and young adults. And so when you can create those things, they're like, hey, I need to use my noggin, or hey, I can be comfortable reading this book in front of my peers at this meeting. There's another one that's recognizing wins, right? The after a hard preseason where we're opening and cleaning the pools, and then even we do the book a couple times pre and post. So end of season when they're managing from college, a lot of times or in high school, it's like these are the hard times, but I know you could do it is the name of the book. I knew you could do it, and that's the theme over and over. And so I think that helps. These themes are so simple of just like really leadership or managing, and we connect it to how can our young leaders connect to that and then remember it. So that's kind of where we bring those concepts into the lifeguarding and the management side of it.
Yeah, anything that they can connect with to connect the dots at work, right? And then work is a lot more fun when you're having fun, even though what we do is really serious. Was there a moment during your session at conference when you looked out and thought, okay, the audience is really connecting with this? They're getting it.
Yeah, I think one of the things, like I said, that we do is we have everyone go around and popcorn read the book. And seeing people of all ages smiling and laughing at reading a children's book, I think that is when we kind of knew that it has clicked in the audience. And, we tell people we're going to a conference and we're going to present on concepts from a children's book. Most people think, okay, what in the world is that even going to be about? Like, when's the last time you've actually read a children's book? But like Chris mentioned, they have great stories and in ways that you can connect that information regardless of your age. So I think that that was a big thing is just seeing people enjoy reading the children's book, even if it's been 40 years since they've even opened one. So
Yeah, and I think to kind of go into what Trey said, I agree 100%. It's the challenge was like to read it the most enthusiastic. So you've got George from Water Safety Products. Shout out to Water Safety Products and George, but he was like up there going with a funny voice and like really kicking it off. We've got Kelly from the Parks and Rec out in Arizona. And then I remember there was a family in there with brother and sister, and they like popcorn back to each other a couple of times before going to the next person. And you could just see that they really bought in to get the most enthusiastic, and then we gave them a book. The winner got a book to take home. They didn't know that, but I would say they fully bought in and weren't afraid to be fun or entertaining and energetic with it was when I could tell like this is resonating with the audience.
I recognize some of those names. You picked the best people to just go all in. Okay,
The-
so real quick, but for those of us who haven't been in school or had children in school for a while, can you tell us what popcorn reading is?
Yeah, so they read one page, how to go look at someone's name tag, say popcorn, Kirsten, and then you would go read the next page. And some of them sat, and then you could tell the ones who really wanted, they stood up, they were showing the book to the audience like you were leading. And then after they read their page, they'd popcorn to the next person. They say popcorn, someone else's name, and it became their turn to read. So the audience was choosing who was getting to read next. And then their only challenge was to read it the most enthusiastic, which is the same thing we do here. And that's where I go back to reading the EQ and having that stage presence. It's like almost a micro lesson on the spot of how do I command this? And then you got to get out of your comfort zone because especially like when we're here, they're with their friends and their peers. But the same was true at AOAP. Like they were peers with everyone. And you had some veterans who like they're great presenters, but people who like didn't want to maybe look as silly, but they all bought in, which was really cool to see. And read enthusiastic showing the book to reading in different voices.
That's fantastic. And what a fun way for your team to get to know each other a little bit. So let's shift to company culture. You all manage a large team across a lot of facilities, a lot of geography. How do you define company culture in that kind of environment?
For me, one of the most important things I think is making sure that every lifeguard or manager, head guard, whatever the case is, they feel seen in their role. I think if people think that they feel seen and think that they matter, then they're more likely to want to come to work, right? So the biggest challenge is we have facilities where they may be the only lifeguard there for the day, and then we have some other facilities where they may be working with 8 other people at the pool. So just giving everyone the opportunity, whether it's the single guard facility or a bigger country club, to actually feel seen and have their voice heard, I think is really important and kind of how we define company culture, I would say.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. When you said that, Kirsten, I also want to like we do these KPIs or key performance indicators. And so for me, each week it's like been developing them. And some of them we don't even have a weekly metric, but like if I'm looking at culture from a team perspective, we have our in services, which are the required trainings for our company. We pay our staff to keep training, but then we host what's called clinics. And then they give us how many numbers are clinics. So it's just extra practice. And we'll sound like a volunteer log because for us, you're just coming to learn CPR, get more comfortable with your skills for free. And so you're volunteering for your community to get better. But I can see we divide our 100 pools and 950 guards into 10 areas, right? So like 980 to 100 guards each area, but we can see what areas, how many they're bringing to a clinic. We can see the percentages of unexcused that are making the mandatory ones, right? To see kind of some buy-in and teamwork. We do tons of company events from volleyball to field day, lifeguard Olympics, so we can see the number of people being brought there for attendance. Everyone after the mandatory trainings each week, they go out to breakfast, like either Waffle House or Chick-fil-A down here. And you can see how many kids come to that. So like those are some tangible numbers that I look at culture, how many people are coming in for interviews from each area for the promotions. Because we're really big on everyone getting into whether it's a on-site like pool manager just at the one pool or the roving managers for the areas. They all interview. So it's a 45-minute to hour panel interview, real questions from like behavioral based, some kind of quizzing, and then real standard questions. But we'll see how many people are you sending in there. And then when I look at like culture, we have a culture of safety, of course, in the industry. So we do what's called VATS or vigilance awareness trainings where we're putting in a mannequin or a silhouette that indicates, hey, there was someone in distress. So how many are they doing per pool, per month? The number of tier violations as well. It's like, hey, this guard messed up. And we really use it as like a learning lesson to say, talk to them, let them know you checked something off and we didn't do it, or we didn't check the chemicals, we didn't log it this hour, the why. But we document all of that with a scan and a quick QR just at the pool, automate that. And so you can see and count, are we adhering to safety and standards at our company by the comparing the different areas. And it goes back to the percentage of at attendance for in-service and clinic as well. And I think this is huge, like culture. And when you say that, looking at it a lot of ways, that's like my seasonal staff. But then we also follow like the traction kind of model for professional staff with the core values of AMS pools. And they're measured against, are you meeting our welcoming core value? Are you meeting the ownership mentality of of your job? Are you being a trailblazer within your role? Are you delivering excellence? And then also like, what was your communication and responsiveness? And they get evaluated on that. We get 360s for the professional staff mid-season. So a lot of checkpoints to try to gauge where we are. We don't want to go a whole season. We do exit interviews as well, which helps us at the end, but we do that mid-season pulse kind of survey. We're doing each quarter check-in with the professional staff, with their direct bosses and supervisors for culture to see, are you meeting the standards for AMS? And then the lifeguards in the seasonal, I would say, is really the safety and honesty is our biggest one we push for lifeguarding. But then from the leadership and the management side is all those other KPIs that they're turning in or that we're seeing. So a lot of different ways that I think we can measure it. Not that necessarily one says everything, but when you look at it holistically, you could see where maybe one team is struggling if they're lower than the other 9 areas. And when you look at it or you get it summarized each week, you can quickly tell it's trending in the wrong way. And that's something that I think learning through my experience, understanding KPIs and what are KPIs in culture and safety and how do we put it, and tracking those has been a huge change that we weren't doing 10 years ago as a company. That became something we do when it came back to try to get better, deliver the same experience to the guests and to each client we have.
Well, and one thing too that I wanted to highlight, just speaking about culture, setting them up for success outside of the job as well. I think we've gotten really good feedback that they appreciate the professional development opportunities that we give. Like Chris said, if you're coming for a pool manager position or one of our area managers, etc., even though it's a seasonal position, we still do the panel interview because we don't want the first time you've ever had an interview to be when you're applying for a job outside of it. And we know not everyone's going to be forever lifeguards like us, but giving them different stuff, whether it's time management or communication or stuff like that, we've gotten really good feedback that they enjoy that part of the culture too, that they're not only learning lifeguard skills, but they also learn real life stuff that they can use as well.
Forever lifeguard is a crazy term, but it's definitely a good one to describe like the aquatic professionals. You guys talked about creating that culture, and I think it's important when you have such a large group to maintain that consistency and kind of development with when they're not all together. And I think you guys do a good way of doing that. So props to you guys. What are some of the core values you try to reinforce with every lifeguard, supervisor, and team leader?
I think I kind of said it from the professional staff. When we go to the lifeguards, we have like safety and honesty are our biggest two. We talk about customer relationships and communication. Those are part of their like packet. I think we do a lot more development with our leadership staff of like really trying to get the values and then bring it to the staff. My mind kind of goes, Daniel, to like phrases we say. And I think because that kind of says if you have the sayings, it kind of tells you who you are. We always talk about being empathetically direct. Like we want to have feedback and we're a feedback rich culture, but you need to deliver it empathetically, but also you have to go give that feedback. I like to ask people and these interviews, we just did them last week. So it's like, hey, Kirsten, I could tell you the next thing to be the president of the organization. Would you want to know? And everyone raises their hand, yes. Or hey, if Daniel, you were doing something that really bugged me every day as your boss, would you want me to tell you so you correct it? And it's yes. Trying to get them to understand that concept and how do you deliver that in a really empathetic way. And it mirrors our other one of like seek to understand. When you have problems, ask questions. So seek to understand it first before you give that coaching. My other couple few that come straight to my mind are make your implicit explicit as well, meaning like just because it's common sense to you, we have to sometimes tell them how to open a door or lock a lockbox, how to chain it up. It's not common sense to them. And it's interesting because as the managers develop, they then see they easily forget like, oh, what they're struggling with and the frustrations, their staff. I can't believe they don't know how to lock a lock. And it's like, you didn't know how to lock it 3 years ago, or you struggled with this same thing. But you have to be very detailed, like how to reset it. And there's a really good like peanut butter and jelly video we watch to show it, or sometimes do that. And then I think something else we highlight, there's not really a saying necessarily, but like you're gonna fail. There's ambiguity in the job when you get promoted, like being comfortable with ambiguity and failure. You're gonna fail at something. If you're not failing, you're not trying something new, but learning from it and not repeating the same failure. That's a big thing we emphasize with all of our staff, and the managers, like, just communicate, tell us you made a mistake, and let's figure out how to fix the mistake moving forward. And then my last one is repetition is the father of learning. I repeat, repetition is the father of learning. That's from Lil Wayne. But it's like you say this, and they all know these quotes when you say it, right? Rather empathetically direct or seek to understand. And Lil Wayne's repetition quote, it's implicit, explicit. They can quote it because we say it all the time. But like those are where I go to of like maybe it's not culture necessarily, but like the values or the things we're trying to teach our leadership staff that stick with them of like how to do a really good job, how to be a great leader in our company. And those sayings I think are very highlighting of those values.
You think of culture like an iceberg where the part that we see out of the water is all the things that we say that we do, but the underwater part, that big part that actually sank the Titanic, that's what we actually do. And I can hear as you talk that the things you're saying, you're driving down to what you're actually doing. And that's what builds that culture, right? So
It's that
it's
big picture.
exciting to see that in action. Yeah.
Thanks. I like that analogy. Yeah. And I've never said it that way or thought of it, but that's where I think like your phrases that you say all the time are like the below, right? If you say it all the time, it's deeper than just a surface level. So I really like that analogy, Kirsten.
Absolutely. It's very visual over here. So when you think about your culture, you guys have grown quickly, right? You said you've grown over the last 6 years. When you're growing quickly and managing across all these different sites, what makes it difficult to maintain that culture?
Kind of going back to what I said before, I think just giving everyone an opportunity to feel like their voice matters and that they feel seen, making sure that everyone has the same opportunities, whether they're working at a pool by themselves or at a pool with other people. And one of the ways that we try to really drive that is through some of our company events. So bi-weekly during the summer, we'll do a different type of event. We just finished a volleyball event, which is a lot of our team's favorite, but we had over 200 people, I think, come out to play volleyball, and we do it like bracket style. And another week we have field day, which is like elementary school field day. Everyone gets to come and we do different games, whether it's like sack race or um, getting an Oreo on your head and trying to get it into your mouth, stuff like that. I think are opportunities where we try to create a culture where it doesn't matter where you work. We want to give you the opportunity to come and meet people, feel seen, have fun with your friends, make new friends with that, and really just get involved. And I think doing the events, we see a lot more buy-in with the staff, where they're like, "Hey, I really enjoyed the volleyball event. It was nice to make new friends." And in doing so, at the end of the year, we'll send out surveys, anonymous feedback surveys from every position. And that's like the number one thing that we see year after year is people say, I love the events and love the community, no matter where they're from.
Yeah, I mean, you said the word that I thought of, Trey, was buy-in. Like that's the hardest thing is as you scale, you have more people and there's one extra person who does have to buy in. And I go back to like the 10, but that's only the lifeguard side, which is what we oversee. We have a whole service side and a repair side as well. And that's where I think the core values for the professional staff has been huge to like give bonuses and measure to keep the year-round staff on it because they start with that and like um, there's an analogy of like you're driving a bus, everyone in your organization, if you're on the right bus, then you all have the core values. And then it's about putting them in the right seat for the right position that you're doing. And so that's what I think drives our professional staff. And this is relatively new for us because it is like, okay, we're not in the right core values to implement beneath your teams. But then for like seasonally, with all the events that Trey was talking about, it really is the buy-in because we're talking about college and high school students and it's the professional staff are overseeing them, but you need that college manager to buy in and it's working longer hours. We're open till 9. So who's fielding that call if the guard can't find they've locked themselves out of the lockbox? Like our management team, it's so cool because you hear like, I'm just gonna drive there and go help so and so out, and it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm wanting to go to bed, put my kids down. And it's like, I'm exhausted. Last pool's closed. And so really the fun kind of chemistry team or family environment, it's done with through events and it's a lot over time. It doesn't happen just instantaneously, but that buy-in I think is the hardest thing. And it just takes one person to whether have their own personal stuff going on or they just are burnt out a bit to lose that buy-in. And then it trickles down to everyone under them as that leader. And so I think the larger you get, the harder it is to maintain that buy-in uniformly.
Yeah, them being spread out through so many different locations, I bet it's hard to kind of be consistent on that part. What do you guys do to kind of help people feel like they're part of the team? You guys talked about the events that take place and the Lifeguard Olympics. Anything specific? There's always, you talked about the bus analogy. There's always people hanging out of the bus or trying to pull the bus back. What do you guys do to kind of make them feel part of the team as well?
Yeah, so kind of apart from our events, after end service, we invite the whole area, so 100 people out to Chick-fil-A and just gives us an opportunity to talk with them. And what we like to do is challenge the management staff during the end services. Like, you need to go sit with a first year lifeguard or someone that you may not know and talk with them and really try to build a relationship because the managers, they hang out all the time, whether it's, at work or outside of work, but really try to do that. And I think that's been something, again, we've gotten feedback. Like, I loved it when my manager came and sat with me at Chick-fil-A for breakfast. It made me feel really involved. So, and that's the stuff that we love to hear. Apart from that as well, we utilize Slack as our internal communication platform that we do. So anytime someone gets a rescue, and then we even celebrate jumps where if they didn't know if they needed to jump or not, and they jumped, we like to celebrate that. So we'll shout them out in Slack for that. If it's someone's birthday, we'll shout them out and say happy birthday in Slack. I think those are all ways that we try to contribute to make sure everyone feels like they're part of the team.
Yeah, they make it their own with their own emoticons or emojis in there, and they're asking for custom ones where they're celebrating everyone and they're posting photos and commenting. So it kind of takes a life of its own. We also make sure that anyone who makes a jump or rescue gets highlighted on our Instagram and social media. They're highlighted every in service, which is our mandatory trainings, and they get at least a minimum stand up and applause. Trey spot on about we actually tell, like, make our implicit explicit to management that you need to look for the first year guards at the volleyball, at the breakfast, sit with them, go bring them in, talk to them. And we like actively look for it as well. And like, if I see you're talking with all your manager friends or your friends that you've grown up with, we'll go be like, hey, please go talk to them or bring this random person standing by themselves. And it's their first time. They don't know anyone and they've taken the time to come to a company event and they're really shy. Right. And making that and just make like, vocalizing it out, the whole implicit explicit of like, this is our expectation, let's go do this, and then acting on it, just saying it a lot helps. But then I also think for new guards, we do a lot of recognition. You can work anywhere in the company. You get staffed at your home base pool, but they can work for anyone, anywhere. On our weekly meetings, we give co-recognition. So they'll give out recognition to the other areas and other teams for who helped us this week. And we have a recognition system for that every meeting. And then for the new guards, we have what we call head guard potential, where we celebrate brand new guards who are starting to do good. They haven't been promoted yet, but Trey and I do 1 hour leadership talks and activities at a local park or our office where we bring them all in and have those conversations. It's turned into local parks now because we're at like 100 to 150 kids coming, brand new guards waking up at 8 a.m. for free just to have this free leadership talk, to hear from us and highlight us in some way. And we, again, get some donuts and it's just really cool to see it. And I think that's when you put all of it together, it's not just one thing, it's all of these little things that combine. And every year it's cool to see how do we get better? What do we do? These 360 surveys to try to implement that as well.
That's awesome. We're going to shift our focus a little bit to lifeguard management and challenges. Trey, you oversee operations across more than 100 aquatic facilities and over 900 team members. What's the biggest challenge in coordinating that scale of service?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is just ensuring that we have consistency across the board. And whether that's consistency with how they're scanning and how they were taught to scan at training classes, or consistency with filling out the opening checklist and the closing checklist and making sure all equipment is in proper condition and that type of stuff, I'd say is the biggest challenge that we face. I will say that AMS, I think, is a company combats it really well because we won't accept clients kind of outside of our geographic region. For that, the purpose of we want to ensure that there's consistency, and how we structure is an area manager should be able to get to the furthest two pools within 20-25 minutes in the event of an emergency. So I think that helps out a lot, between the area manager or the assistant operations manager who they kind of report to, and then the operations manager, and then myself. We're always out in the field and we kind of divide and conquer with how we go. So we ensure that at least one manager goes to the pools every single day. And I think that's helped out a lot with consistency on my end.
Nice. We talked about that consistency and just being on site, right? When your managers or your full-time team are visiting sites, what does that oversight look like while they're at the pool? You're balancing safety and staffing and training. And now, as a management company, also these very different customer expectations. So, what does good oversight look like for you all?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like the guards have to do an opening and closing checklists. As we've gotten into 2020s now, one of the big things I took from like my previous job and company is like, how do we automate it? How do we leverage technology? So they're logging the chemicals. Like it's simple. We just made a QR system. One of our employees did. So we can see live like the chlorine and pH at all the facilities. And we have checkpoints of the day where one of the upper management are checking it to be like, hey, here's this screenshot. These are low. And it helps direct where we need to go to next, where you wouldn't normally get that. They had to call us or text us. And if they failed that, you didn't see it, but we can see live like, hey, this didn't get scanned in time. On the negative, I think like we try really to say we call it a tier violation, but like that those are getting entered when we miss the mark and that we see them and we say it should happen daily. Like they're going to miss the mark. They're learning how do you have that conversation. That staff is sent home when they don't meet the mark, whether they didn't meet the standard for seeing the mannequin in the water, whether they weren't meeting the standard for being in uniform. We are firing them if they have a phone in the sand, and that's a no. We tell them 5 different from recruiting when the parents meet us to end their training. They sign it in the manual, they take a test on it, and we tell them every time we have an infraction in the season as a memo. But like it's holding to the values too of, and that's I think really important. Like we send people home. We carry over 50 people on call a day, meaning that they're ready to get to the pool in around 30 minutes for not meeting our standard or someone doesn't show, we can get someone there in that time frame. And that goes back to like the geography and some of the business case we've done, only taking so many. And then logging the VATs, logging the audits, seeing all of those, I think is what that oversight kind of looks like for us. We also have digitized our cleaning. So we're giving like live cleaning pictures and results. We can see when they don't come in. We can see when the picture is like they're trying to like stand way back. And we've got someone actually, we're spending money to look at all of those and give that feedback and correct it same day. So it's cool to see how we're using the technology and everything. And it keeps evolving. It's just constantly evolving. But all of that combined is what we do for oversight and good operations every day.
It takes time and commitment and the right tools, but you all are really talking about inspecting what you expect and creating that accountability, which I think a lot of us in a post lifeguard shortage world almost are afraid to do that, but it's very clearly built into your culture.
Yeah, Kirsten, I've gotten in like passionate discussions, but like just very much where I've told like I really disagree. Where at different conferences, and I go to a bunch, but it's like where they say we can't fire them because they have a phone on a stand, and I said I would rather tell a customer that we have to be swimming your own risk because there's less liability to the customer that they knew inherently that there was no lifeguard, so it was swimming your own risk today. They have those hours. Then having a guard in stand with a phone is more liability to me. and it's life altering for that individual. That's one of my passion things is no, we have this standard and we're going to hold to it. I was in stand during the COVID shortage to meet so we could say we met every shift every day. It was not fun. We were working doubles and 50, 60-hour weeks, but it kind of just goes to like, at the end of the day, what do you want to do? And I'm very lucky, and I recognize I'm in the blessed that I get to set that standard all the way down. I've got a team that fully buys into it. But I'm big on like, I'd rather tell someone I can't give you a guard today than give them a guard who doesn't really care too much or doesn't understand it. And I have the mindset as well as like, this is a good learning lesson. I'd rather you learn it now at 15 or 16 where you have broken something that you knew was we have very few fireable offenses on the spot versus learning lessons. And you knew that. We reminded you so many times, here's your learning lesson. Please learn for the next job and do it now at 15 versus in your 20s or while you're supporting a family and further down. So I kind of keep that mindset of it. And that comment you said sparked that, but I'm really big and believe that.
And I would also challenge you to not say that you're lucky. You all put in a lot of work to build that culture and to set that standard both with your team and your customers. And so a little bit of luck, maybe, but also a lot of work, and that should be recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just know not everyone owns the company, right? To set the standard. And so I do recognize, but it is like, how do you manage it? And having the difficult conversations with the boss to say, I really think this should be our standard, and having that difficult conversation and coming to an agreement. At the end of the day, I get not everyone is a decision maker, but that's where I have the lock in. My business partner and I are in full lockstep. It's always been like that at AMS for our entire history. That's been our standard. And even in COVID and hard times, we've kept it. It wasn't easy. And like I'd be lying if I was like, oh my God, can we just it's like literally day 2 and it's his first shift ever. And I mean, it's a cool story. It's one of my ops managers. She's getting promoted to director this year. And she said, Chris, this is our standard. We're gonna lose them. I'll figure it out. I'll guard if I have to. And that vividly stands out to me, and I was so happy and proud, and it kind of like, even in my moment of almost not maybe weakness is like, oh man, I get it. Should we lenient? And she's like, no, we're gonna do this. It made me think of that's the buy-in from my employees. So blessed. And then it's again the culture we've set here for the people who have been here, like, no, this is our standard. We're gonna make this hard decision. I don't care if I'm in the stand, we're gonna do it, and then we're gonna make sure it doesn't happen again for the other staff that we have because we're short staffed. If we let it happen, then it's probably gonna happen more.
Yeah. Setting that standard and then veering from it, I feel like is where you find issues, and you guys sticking to it and adhering to only that way across the board is what makes you be successful. And I feel like what other organizations are looking for someone to kind of set that standard so that they could use the data and build from that going forward. So I think it's great. I know it's hard to find good people, and that public perception is kind of a big piece of that and what people see at the facilities. So how do you train, recruit, and retain good people in the industry that depends on seasonal or early career staff?
I think it starts like the theme of the whole podcast is just creating a good culture where people want to stay and want to work and want to come back. And I think we can achieve that through some of the stuff that we've talked about, whether it's the events or breakfasts. We have really high retention rate. I think this last year was in the mid 70s for the amount of staff that signed their return letters and wanted to come back, which is great. We love to see. And it makes our job a lot easier in the off season to start recruiting. With recruiting too, we start really early with doing that. And we go and we have lots of referrals from people that currently work here. And they're like, hey, we want to refer our friends to come work here. And we kind of have a program in place that incentivizes that as well. So I think a combination of those is how we're able to be successful with recruiting. And then, yeah, it starts in October for us. So we will close our pools, and then starting in October, we're out, and people are like, why are you recruiting for the next summer? And by November, when we're 90% staffed, we say, that's why. So sign up early and we'll get you in. We're excited to have you, love to have you. We do start early. So if people want to work, then we try to get them in then.
Everything Trey just said. And kudos to the team because we're unique too, because we have to get certified every year. So it's not like a 2-year cert and it's just an easy, you've got to redo that cert again. So it's 100% the culture, and that starts it. And I think I said it to begin but it's not an overnight thing. It's a long time, little by little. But once you have it, it makes your job so much easier. And then the only thing is like creating that pipeline for our managers to keep them here longer and give them that leadership and training program, I think is our other success within the managers and keeping them here the 5 to 7, 8 years that we have for our seasonal college staff, or the ones that come back in their masters as well, which is cool.
You guys, without us asking, have talked a lot about some of the skills that you expect in your managers beyond those technical skills. I know we used to call them soft skills, but really they're essential life, grown up, real people in society skills. When you look at lifeguards, what skills are you working with them to develop beyond their certification?
Yeah, for the lifeguards specifically, I think today is like the human interaction. We have a meet and greet policy. They've got to go talk to 5 people every day. We are working on some problem solving. We have a let's learn, like 7 questions. All managers will ask the lifeguards to help reinforce, again, repetition, how to the chlorine, the water levels, our emergency action plans, what needs to go on the stands, right? Some reinforcement there. And then big on communication, right? They're in charge of their schedule. We do hold their hand and help them and have automated reminders going out, but no shows lead to terminations as well. So I think all of that within the lifeguards specifically. But I think the leaders here, the managers, we do interview skills, the resume skills, trying to enforce critical thinking and like business concepts from email etiquette. We have a whole SOP on how to write an email, like what is a 2 line and a CC, what is BCC, who are our different clients, like a HOA versus a property manager, spellings and homophones that are crazy. I like to say this example because it's so unique and people, but they don't learn this in school. But if they're going to go out in business, you're expected to know how to write an email, and that is not taught. They don't understand that. And so, not the email part is not lifeguard. And our management's got to talk to the staff. We try to teach business concepts, or whether you're going to go in medical or teaching or law. And we always say, like, the leadership, we've got people working in NASA and amazing jobs that have been in this program. But what are those basic foundations we can have them?
I think hardest skills for, especially if they're 15 or 16-year-old lifeguards, is conflict resolution and being comfortable dealing with situations where you may be uncomfortable. And I think it takes time, but I would say that's one of the most important skills we want them to have is. You're gonna have to blow your whistle. You're gonna have to enforce rules, and it may be someone that's your parents' age that you're enforcing the rules for. So just empowering them to make those decisions, letting them know that when you have to deal with conflict, as long as you're following kind of our policies, procedures, not deviating from that, we're going to support you 100% with that. And I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge that we see is conflict resolution, empowering them to blow their whistle, not be afraid to tell adults to not run and stuff like that. So,
You guys touch on a little bit with that kind of the management team portion of it, but where do you guys see some of the bigger opportunities to improve the lifeguard management in the industry right now?
I think just overall with lifeguard management and some of the stuff that is kind of a repeated topic at different conferences that we go to is making sure that if they are a single guard facility, that they are just as safe as any other facility. And I think that starts with equipping them with the right skills, the knowledge of how you actually scan a pool, like what you're looking for, what you're doing during emergencies. What does your emergency action plan look like at a single guard pool versus a multi guard pool when you may have to rely on a patron to call 911 for you or go and grab an AED for you? So I think that that's the biggest opportunity, just holistically for the management side of the industry, is making sure that we're setting up our single guard pools for success just as much as we are any other facility.
I think, like, also, how do we do oversight? Technology is becoming more and more prevalent. How do they not get distracted? How do you hold your standards with the new technology coming in, or how do you even leverage it? I think that's a big one for as you look at managing. How are you leveraging your technologies, whether it's from training with virtual reality coming in and all of these new systems, the tracking systems? How do you implement them to work with what you currently do to enhance it and not be afraid of it? And the helping with transparency. I think for us, we're trying to be more transparent, utilize it to build the customers as well as the lifeguard. So I think those are opportunities for growth or enhancement within the management realm.
Let's talk about kind of leadership and training and innovation, right? Because all of those things have been around since there were lifeguards. You guys both bring a different mix of operational leadership and mentoring and training and experience. How do you keep improving as leaders yourselves?
I think there's a quote like leaders are readers. So I'm big on reading, podcasts, I go to a lot of different conferences. I also have mentors like other friends of mine and fraternity brothers and friends and people I've met that are entrepreneurs as well. So from a business standpoint, I'm trying to have a mentor in the field, podcast reading, conferences. I try to do new ones every year and then go out of my comfort zone, meet new connections, joining local organizations. So I do all of that to keep improving my skills.
Yeah, I would just say someone told me one time, and I don't even know if it's a real word, but they said you need to be unoffendable, meaning that you have to be open for critical feedback from all levels, and that's something that I take with me wholeheartedly. Like I encourage my team to give me feedback if they think that there's something I could be doing a little bit differently to support them. So I think just being open to that, being unoffendable, learning that there are new ways to do stuff, and just because it's always been done the same way forever doesn't mean that there's not a better way to do it. Is something that's really helped me kind of improve my leadership.
Yeah, you hear that a lot in leadership, especially things that have been doing things for so long. Well, it worked. Why are we going to change it? Well, it's because things are advancing, and I'm sure there wasn't opportunities for this growth. And like you said, having a mentor and having those resources are huge as a leader. What role does feedback play in a company like AMS?
Tons. Yeah, I think we've kind of hit it. Like we do the pulse surveys, core value to get the upper management 360s. We do end of season surveys. Our motto is being empathetically direct for the staff. I think I started off with like, if you want to, if it was one thing you could do to know how to get that promotion, would you want me to tell you it? The answer is always yes. If it's something I'm doing that makes you upset as your boss, would you want me to tell you what to stop doing? The answer is always yes. There's a podcast that says like, if you're driving on a road on a highway, takes a lot of miscorrections before you end up in the ditch. You don't just typically automatically end up in a ditch. So all those miscorrections is not telling the feedback. I think it's huge for us. And it's like Trey said, getting it for ourselves too, and having that open door to say, what can I do better? And then taking it and then actively working on that feedback.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest thing is it's easy to like welcome feedback and hear it, but actually acting on it, I think is just as important.
Absolutely. So, how do you guys use kind of cross functional teamwork to keep projects moving forward and to make those corrections before the problems grow into the car in the ditch?
When I think of cross functional for us, like we have our segments of lifeguard, service, and repair. And so it is the service team kind of training them what should a lifeguard look like scanning if you see something telling us or correcting it on the site. Same with the repair, but then also it's like, hey, we need this item, who's closest to the local store to go buy it, or hey, can we go bring labor? We need just because it's a service pool and we don't clean it, the lifeguards have a lot more labor in the summer, who can help out here. And opening and closing season, service team is opening these pools before we get the lifeguards who help vacuum and do the basic cleaning routes every day. So for us, like it doesn't matter that it's this team. It's how do we get this done as quickly as possible? And it goes, I think, as well, like one of our core values is responsiveness. Who's the quickest that can take this and handle it and knock it off? And if Trey starts it and then he's out the next day, I'm going to do it. We all have backups and we're all off on different days. And so I think like our cross functional is it doesn't matter just who can get the resolution. We all know how to do the jobs. I mean, there's certain repairs we can't do, but we can get resources there or go help and go take care of other ones to get the smaller things off of the repair team to prioritize the larger repair. So that's what we do. It's the who can get it done first, who has the bandwidth to do it and get it resolved. And that's how we're preventing more so customer issues, but then also like everyone trying to understand what is the safety of the lifeguard team. What do the different teams do? Because a lot of times the managers or the technicians don't understand, which can sometimes cause resentment of, well, they've got this great field. And even within our management team too, we found a few years ago that the lifeguard team was starting a little later in the fall season and than the other managers, and they were getting upset about it, but they didn't realize the lifeguard team was working till 7 o'clock and had to work weekends for training classes. Or like the lifeguard team had off on a Monday, Tuesday and the week because they worked that whole weekend. And it's like, well, and when you explained it, it's good lessons. And like, and it just took someone saying a question or like, hey, I think this is kind of an issue. So the cross functional, maybe communication too, as well as working to solve the projects.
You guys have both had an opportunity to work in aquatics for a long time, even long enough to see a lot of the change that has occurred. What has changed the most in how companies lead and operate?
Yeah, I think just kind of adapting to your environment. I think one of the biggest shifts that we've noticed recently is our first year staff really seek flexibility in their schedules more than anything. That's like the highest thing that they prioritize. So we've had to kind of shift on how we operate with that. For example, we would take an 8-hour shift that we typically have always had and split it down the middle. Say, okay, people prefer more flexibility, so we're just going to do two 4-hour shifts instead. It's changed a little bit. We're, incurring a little bit higher of a recruitment cost because we're getting more people in. But that's like the biggest shift I've seen. And people want flexibility with that. And two, one of the things that we tell everyone when we go out to recruit, and then we have everyone join a sign up meeting before they do it. So we go over our expectations, kind of what the summer looks like, what the lifeguard class looks like, is we understand flexibility is important to you. So we guarantee all time off at AMS during the summer for sports, vacations, extracurriculars. If you have a second job, whatever the case is, you just put in your time off during the deadline, and then we're going to grant it and guarantee that you're not scheduled for that. So I think that's kind of one of the things I've seen as the biggest changes in how we kind of operate.
Yeah, I agree. Like where people were 6, 10 years ago for staffing and we're 1.5 times where we used to be because we need the extra guards for that flexibility. I also think for me, my mind went to like the technology, both of what we're using to leverage the systems, but also phones are everything, filming guard, like messaging and TikTok. Like everything is so viral now, which is a new difficulty you have to do, how to reach people for recruiting, but then also how to like deal with complaints that they're filming it or they're editing the film and so that's created different challenges I think that weren't here a decade ago of just how pervasive maybe how technology and phones are everywhere in our life and everyone's using them and they all want to be a keyboard warrior or film you and it's created new challenges that I think we adapt to, but that's different than I think a decade ago or so.
Absolutely. Some of us on this podcast have been in the industry since the 1900s. Some things have not changed. So tell us something that still matters just as much as it always has.
I think safety, um, it hasn't changed. I think that's like from day one when I did this and when you sign people up in the buy-ins, it's the safety and permission of what you want to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's the same thing. And one thing that we try to do, starting with our lifeguard classes, is give them the why on behind why they're doing the job. And we say that you have the opportunity to go and work inside in the air conditioner or work fast food and make just as much money or whatever the case is. But really telling them the why behind their jobs, why it's so important that we're staying vigilant, why it's so important that we know our skills, why it's so important that we're communicating with our managers, I think is just as important now as it's probably ever been.
All right. When you guys think about the future of the aquatic profession, what gives you guys the most hope?
I would say I think that contrary to what people hear, I think this generation wants to work, at least from what I'm seeing in our community. We have 3 times the amount of applications every year than the spots available for us to fill, which is a great issue to have. But I can see that more people are wanting to work. And, in the future, we're talking about doing something with down the road collecting those people that aren't old enough to quite lifeguard yet, but how do we keep them interested and want them to come back to further our mission of safety in the aquatic realm?
I agree 100% with that. I also think for me, it's like the passion of the people you're meeting at the conferences, and you're meeting all these young people as well who I think there's maybe more in the industry of like you can make this a career and people are trying to vocalize it. I hear it on multiple podcasts and it's always a theme. And so I think that's great and trying to get the young new employees, younger generation like this can be a career and you meet these people at the conferences and in an industry and see that passion. And so that gives me the hope for the future is just meeting them and talking to all the different people that are just as passionate as we all are on this podcast right now.
I love it. As much as people like to talk poorly of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the fact of the matter is that they do bring things to the industry. What are some of those things that you think older leaders should pay attention to?
Yeah, for me, I think it's just a different kind of approach to everything. One of the things that we highlighted today, actually, in one of our manager meetings, is we have a manager. She's in college, and she is really, really good about connecting with the staff. When she gives feedback, whether it's praising them or giving them critical feedback, she knows all their slang and jargon and all this, and she can really do it in a way that says, "Hey, I need to address this, but I understand you as well." So I think that's something that they bring. And then, like I said earlier, I think that people are easy to do stuff the same way all the time because it's just always how it's been done. And our young staff will teach us how technology can really enhance and kind of optimize operations with just different stuff we've done. So that's been really nice to see them, and they're a lot more creative, I think, on some of our social media stuff too. And they're tracking engagements and analytics and this type of stuff that I've never heard of before, but they're really great at that. So we really try to utilize them for stuff like that.
Yeah, I heard this phrase. Mind went to the technology of like what can the managers pay attention to. They're technology natives as they've been born with technology. Doesn't mean they are great at all of it because like the emails and some of the business sides. But I think the advertising, the marketing, they know how to engage with the demographic that the stakeholders or the recruiters want to target. And so I think that's what they should pay attention to, right? Like leverage that staff that knows how to market on the whether it's TikTok or Instagram, they know how to make these. So and whether whatever kind of curated or custom form you want to let them go work in, whether it's on shift, off shift, I think that's where leaders right now could really leverage them for the technology because they're great with the marketing and what is going to speak to the generation of recruiting. I also think they bring great energy and drive and passion. I think like I I don't think it's changed necessarily. I've gotten to do this over from 2003 till now, and I think the young people in college and even some of the high schoolers, they want the ones that are your leaders and that are with your organization for a while, they want to learn. They want to be leaders. They want to excel. And so they work harder and better than people that have been in the industry decades or professional staff sometimes because they wanna just they have the buy-in, they wanna learn, and they really buy into, "I'm gonna make this my all even though it's seasonal because I wanna to grow, and you guys, if you fully have a culture that is of growth and leadership," I think all new every generation, and it's just, like, finding what way that you can connect with them. You always have, right, from the boomers to the Gen X to millennials to Gen Z, and then we're getting into Gen Alpha pretty soon. You always have that next stereotype, but I find like there's always going to be great employees. And how do you find them, identify them, cultivate the talent, and then those are going to be your stars.
The part that you're lucky in is that you get to make those decisions and you get to set those standards and create that culture. And I think you guys doing that and getting the buy-in from the managers and them extending that piece of it, I think they're just getting staff to buy in where they get to work, they get to learn, they get to excel in things. Not that they have to. It's not a thing that they're assigned to do. It's you guys are creating those opportunities for them. How do you think about developing the next generation of managers and leaders inside AMS and aquatics more broadly?
I think one is like, how do we get that critical thinking skill with them? How do we get them to problem solve and not just ask for the solution? With I think somewhat is like a Google, we instantaneously have it, and we can't just give you the answer. So how do we instill like again this problem solving type skill? I also think I kind of said it earlier when you ask how do we look for the future is if you aren't meeting it, we're gonna let you go and have I hope you learn from it and having that kind of mindset a little bit too of like, let's learn now, or even if you're great, but let's learn from the failures. So let's fail a lot now in these roles that we're designed to learn and fail. We know you're a young leader and the ones that buy in and are honest and make the mistake. Let's learn from that so you can excel in the future. And then my other thing looking for the future, again, kind of unique. And I've been blessed to kind of sit through a lot of specialized like leadership summits through careers, get to go to conferences, learn there. Through my MBA, I had some great courses and opportunities. My other thing is I try to take all my favorite lessons and create a summer long lesson plan or almost like a multi year. If you're here multiple years, we do some different books and lessons each year. How do I instill my favorite concepts in these leaders and people in our program for multiple years that you can take away and really remember and resonate. And I joke that I hope you're going to remember me when you're old and famous and then give me some money or thank me in a speech that I helped instill these. But how do I transmute all of my favorite things into a form that's easily digestible and understandable for these new leaders, that relates to their role that they can take with them and skills? So that's kind of how I take it, looking for the future. How do we help in all of those different ways?
So, with that in mind, give us one lesson from your work that could apply to leadership outside of aquatics. Only one, I know.
I would say it's making sure that no matter what the task is, like big or small, that you're completing it to your fullest extent. Every single time, put 100% in. If it's too hard, don't put it on the back burner and say, I'm going to come to it later. Like, figure out the resources that you need to get it done and just get it done.
Mine would be, don't be afraid to speak up and ask for clarity if you aren't fully sure of what you've been assigned, or if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it. Like, use problem solving skills, but don't just guess or assume at something. Like, if I'm getting assigned something in a meeting, I need to take my action. And if I don't understand what my boss wants, I need to ask for clarity right then and there. Because if I leave it on silent, then their boss is going to say, you knew what you're doing. And then if you turn it in wrong, and I think that's my biggest thing. Don't be afraid to speak up when you need to.
All right, guys, we're going to jump into our lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. All right. What's one habit every great leader should have?
Always continue to learn and grow.
I would say organization.
I like it. Tell me one book, idea, or story that shaped your leadership.
Radical Candor is the book. I think Manager Tool podcast, love it, from some managing style basics. And then This is Water. It's a commencement speech. I don't remember the guy's name, but I love that. Those all three together form my management style.
And for me, I think the book Atomic Habits, teaching you how to build and create strong habits that you can carry in all walks of your life, is mine.
What is the hardest part of managing such a large team?
Adapting your management style to every individual's needs to be effective when you're giving feedback or coaching them in whatever way they need.
I would say creating buy-in at all levels for all staff would be the hardest part, but once you're able to do it, then I think you're golden.
On the other end of the spectrum, what's the best part about working in aquatics?
I think the team chemistry or bond you automatically have with everyone else in the industry, like just the closeness that you have, both from we're in the pools having to do rescues and bathing suits, and then also you have this shared goal that you instinctively have, and it's just no matter where you go, you have an amazing bond. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I would say something very similar, probably just the community. I think there are very few people just in the world that kind of understand the struggles and the triumphs of stuff that you go through. So to me, that's the best part about working in aquatics.
And then today's episode circled around one word I feel the most, probably culture. What's one word you could use to describe AMS culture?
I would say special.
Mine is invested. I think that we want to be really invested into our employees and they should be invested into their facilities, which then invest into the customer.
Got to get that flywheel going where it just kind of takes over on its own, right?
Sure.
Love it. Chris and Trey, thank you for joining us and for sharing both the serious and the creative sides of leadership in aquatics. Your conference session and your day-to-day work both show how culture, communication, and care can shape a stronger team and a stronger industry. We'll include information about AMS pools and any of the resources they mentioned in the show notes. I also want to recommend that anybody who is coming to the International Aquatics and Water Safety Conference, which is hosted by AOAP in 2027, will be in Reno, check out Chris's workshop that he's working with us on to help introduce new conference attendees to conference, get them acclimated, help them meet some folks, and help them create strategic plans that they can take the inspiration from conference and put it into actions. We're really excited to have Chris on board as part of that team. And we hope that we'll also see Trey and Chris as speakers in 2027.
Of course, we're excited to be there.
Yeah, thank you both. This was a great time today, and I appreciate taking time to interview us and hear just our perspectives on things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We hope this episode gives you guys some new ideas for leadership, training, and team culture in your own organizations. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time on AOAP's Discussion from the Deep End, made for aquatic professionals by aquatic professionals.